Hello and welcome back to Kevin in the Cabin. This episode I'd like to talk about practicing trumpet on a cruise ship. Practicing trumpet on a cruise ship is rather difficult for two reasons. The first reason it's difficult is because it's like a balancing act. You got to know how much you can practice, what you can practice, and not get too tired so you can make it through the shows, because that's why you're here. You're here to play the shows. You're not here so much to practice. And the second reason is finding a place where you can practice. My teacher in school always told us that the trumpet was a rather offensive instrument, and that is very, very true. It's a loud instrument, it's very abrasive, it's very bright and piercing, and it's not appropriate in every single environment and setting. So with those two things in mind, I'm going to go over what I practice from when I started 7 years ago to today, because developing as a trumpet player, have grown significantly in 7 years. And also where I practice, because this changed between the two lines as well as from ship to ship, even within the same lines, because not every ship is the same, as well as not every cruise line is the same. So I'll dive a little bit into that as well. So starting with the first cruise line I worked for, this was harder for me to find out where I could practice because it was my first time doing ships. So I had to kind of find my own way because there was only one trumpet player on board. So I couldn't ask another trumpet player, hey, where do you go practice? Let's make a schedule so we're not in there at the same time and we can get done what we need to get done during appropriate times. I had to kind of trailblaze that myself. As I was trying to find these practice spots, I would often get noise complaints regularly, because I would go practice in the main stage, which I thought was empty, but is surrounded by cabins. So I'd go play there, say like 2 p.m. And then people would come knocking and be like, oh, we can't be too loud because people are trying to sleep or nap or anything like that. Noise can't be in here. And I understand that we're on a cruise ship, it's a floating hotel, and people are on vacation, and people aren't wanting to, hear trumpet all throughout the day. So after the main stage fell through, what I would try to do was go practice on the open deck in the crew area. This worked all right, except for the acoustics there were really not good. While we were at sea, the wind is really loud against the ship, so I really couldn't hear myself really well. And I also got more noise complaints, also from crew, because it was really close to the smoking area, and they don't want to be listening to trumpet exercises when they're just trying to get 5 minutes to themselves. After both of those failed, what I would do then was use a practice mute in my cabin, but I really didn't like doing this for a few reasons. One reason is I didn't want to bother my cabin mate. Even though he said, hey, it's all good, I personally just don't want to do that, and I like practicing in a room alone. I don't like anyone around me when I'm doing it. I just like being with me, myself, and my trumpet, and that's it. Another reason I don't like using the practice mute is because it makes everything very resistant, very sharp, and it's not really like playing the trumpet. In a pinch, it does work really well, like when you have to do it if you're living in an apartment or a crowded house or playing in a cruise ship, hotel, anything like that. Practice mute is really good for that, but I don't like using it for a prolonged time. So after I got tired of using the mute all the time and bothering my cabin mate, I found out that on port days, the piano bar was a really good place for me to do that. So on port days, most of the guests are off the ship, as well as a lot of the crew. So this gave me time to go in the piano bar, close the doors, be completely alone, and I didn't have to use a practice mute. From my experience, practicing trumpet on a cruise ship is very time sensitive because all these venues are always taken up by certain events. So now let's move on to what I would practice on the cruise ships. So I would practice from very basic things to more technical things. I'd throw in an etude every now and then, do some transcribing sometimes, not really often. I really don't do a whole lot of transcribing, especially back then, as well as working on the music itself. Some of the charts that we were given were a little more technically difficult, and I will go a little more detail on the charts we had to play in a later video, because I have a lot to say about those. So learning what I could and should practice from day to day was a real eye-opener and a journey for me when I first started cruise ships because of just how heavy the workload was. Coming straight out of school, I was practicing for hours a day. I may have had a rehearsal or two, every other day or every day. But with most of it being practicing in school, this gave me a chance to take the horn off of my face and not play, even if I was practicing 3 to 6 hours a day. However, the workload on the ship being anywhere between 4 to 7 sets a day, this doesn't give me the chance to take the trumpet off of my face. So if I looked at the schedule and saw that I had, say, like 3 horn trio sets throughout the day, and then later I had to play 3 to 4 sets with the band, I would know that my practice sessions were going to be very, very minimal, more just warming up and just hoping I can get through those sets for how heavy not just the sheer amount of the sets were, but what we had to play in the sets. The horn trio sets were actually the easier sets, strangely enough, when it came to endurance and getting through those sets and everything like that. It was the rock band sets that really I had to tailor my practicing towards and making sure everything was working, because the stuff we had to play for the rock band was just not horn friendly in any way. Several of the charts we had, we were playing from top to bottom for 5 minutes straight, and then the next song will come in, play for another 5 minutes straight, and I mean 5 minutes straight. That trumpet's on your face on beat 1, does not leave until the very end. However, with that being my very first contract, I was rather gung-ho of just playing it all. I know a lot better now. Another thing that jacked me up from all these sets, not to put all the blame on the sets and what we had to play in the sets, although there is a lot wrong there. And from videos I've heard of my friends who still work for that company, there still is a lot of wrong with those charts and how the schedules are set up, and it's not at all in the favor of the trumpet player. But as I've grown and discovered new equipment and what works better for me, I found out that I was playing on a trumpet that just really wasn't helping me in that style of music, as well as the mouthpiece as well. In school, I was told you play this make and model of trumpet and this mouthpiece. So that's what I did getting on ships. I played that trumpet and that mouthpiece, not knowing anything about proper equipment. Just did a little bubble. Hold on. So that's what I did getting on ships. I played that trumpet and that mouthpiece, not knowing it was not at all helping me get through these, 5 to 6 hour performance days. However, working for that first cruise line when it came to practicing and preparing for these sets, I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot, I've developed a lot, and I've learned a lot in when not to play, as well as more proper equipment tailored towards what it is I am doing. So moving on to the current cruise line I work for, there's still a lot of similarities from the last one in that still a cruise ship, still a trumpet, still a loud and aggressive and annoying instrument that not everyone wants to hear all throughout the day. I primarily practice in my cabin. It's Kevin in the cabin. I just throw in a practice mute and no one really seems to care. I think someone's banged on the wall once or twice, and it was still at a decent hour, and whenever someone bangs on the wall, I'm just like, alright, I'll just practice a little bit later, it's all good. However, I still don't like using a practice mute every single day, doing the same things, because I truly believe that you kind of get used to playing these things with the mute in, and then when you take it out, a lot of problems kind of arise. However, in a pinch, it's an absolute wonderful tool to have. With similarities to the last line, I still try to find a particular venue I can go to and take the practice mute out so I can practice like normal. What I have found best is the officer's bar during the day. So I'll go up there, say around 2 o'clock, and no one's up there at all. It's connected to the crew's smoking section, so people will kind of be in and out every so often, but I don't pay them any mind, they don't pay me any mind. I just keep on practicing. They'll sometimes give a thumbs up, and we just kind of keep on going. My first contract with this current cruise line, I could only practice on the stage, and I would close this really long curtain separating the hallway into the venue itself. This really didn't do much when it came to separating sound as well as people coming in to listen. At the time, I was still really big onto doing long tones for the very first thing I did out of the gate, just to kind of get things warmed up, get my head in the sound, everything like that, just kind of get things moving and grooving. And something I found so funny is that even though that curtain was closed, I pulled out the private event sign and put it in front of the curtain. Any possible thing that says you're not supposed to be in this room right now, guests would still go through that curtain and just sit down and watch and listen to me play long tones. And honestly, it was more endearing than annoying. Some people would find that annoying, but I was like, people are just wanting to, sit and listen. But I just always found it so funny. It's like, you're gonna sit and listen for me playing long tones and get excited that I'm playing a G for 10 seconds? Shoot, if you found that G really exciting, just wait till F sharp. The funniness aside, let's move to what I would practice. With this being my second round on ships and understanding that balance a little better, I was able to practice more and far more efficiently. As I mentioned in a previous video, the workload with this cruise line is significantly less. I said it was 3 sets maximum, which gave me a lot of wiggle room for how much I could practice. And as long as I knew what we were playing that night, I could really tailor my practice sessions. And my practice sessions normally consisted of me just warming up early in the day. What I normally do is buzz my mouthpiece. Around 11 o'clock, everyone's already awake, so I'm not going to have anyone banging on the wall telling me to shut up. Now what I do is start with the Bailin or Bailin, however you pronounce it, do several of those up to about high C, kind of get everything moving and grooving the way it needs to be, do some Gecker articulations, and I may throw in some Arbin as well. Then if it's still early in the contract and we're still rehearsing, I'll meet up with the saxophone player and practice parts with him for a bit, and then we'll go to rehearsals and then continue on with the day. And then I usually show up backstage an hour early so I can continue warming up for the show as well as getting a little more practice in. And what I'm currently doing backstage is going through all Clark 2 from low C up to C, slurred, single tongue, and double tongue. And even though I double tongue only twice a week, I still need to make sure it sounds good. And then after the Clark 2s are going well, I'll do a couple glons to make sure things are moving up and down freely and just make sure I'm ready for the night. Now, I have gotten a few questions about what I do to warm down, and I really don't do any warming down. That's not really something I was taught in school, so I just never really do it. And something I don't like doing is just jumping into something that I don't really know what I'm doing. So if anyone has hey, you should do this to warm down, let me know. Throw it down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to just try it and let you know if it's helping. Now, lastly, I'd like to go over practice mutes as well as other practice equipment that I use as well as have used in the past, because I do find practice mutes to be very, very, very useful when you're living in such tight quarters, as in staying overnight in a hotel, living on a cruise ship, as well as living in apartments. Keeping the peace is very, very, very important when it comes to living with people. When I first got on cruise ships, my very first practice mute, I believe, was a Dylan's music practice mute. It was a small, truly maybe that big, went into the trumpet bell like any other mute. It went flush up against the bell, so it wasn't sticking out or anything like that. It was about $40 or $50 or so. It was very stuffy. It made everything very sharp. It was a practice mute. The second practice mute I ever used was an attachment to a regular Harman mute. It was called the silencer, and it was about that big, and it just went into the opening of a Harman mute, and it just worked like a practice mute. I did find this one to be a lot less stuffy and a lot more in tune. It still made everything really stuffy, really, really constricted, as well as rather sharp compared to just a Harman mute or playing open, but that's just the nature of all practice mutes. None of them feel good. They all are really sharp, but you're not using it all the time, so it's like I said, in a pinch, they do work really good. And I think the silencer attachment, was $20 or $30 or something like that. I got it in 2020 because the Dylan's music practice mute did end up breaking on me from so much wear and tear, and I think it may have fallen out of the bell or something like that at just the perfect angle and just end up breaking on me. I use currently the Yamaha practice mute, and I think it's the Gen 2 or something like that. They used to be really, really long and stick out of the bell and everything, but these are kind of cool because they're electronic. You can plug in the little system thing right there, and you can hear yourself perfectly. If you use a system, I really don't use a system. I leave it at home. I just use this for 4 months, and I think it works great. It, just as the other ones, feels very stuffy and makes it very sharp. I'll even show you on the trumpet here. Go ahead and grab it. That's about how far my tuning slide is right now, and normally when I play is right about there, give or take. However, even though this one is very stuffy, it does feel a little more open, so when I'm doing those violin flexibility exercises, it doesn't feel like a very foreign thing. But it does make things very sharp, hence me showing you the tuning slide. And lastly, a device that I've kind of been a little new to, as well as a technique I've been new to, is buzzing my mouthpiece, because that's not something that we did in school either. But I did pick up while we were in Spain a Stomvi up sound, and you just like plug in your mouthpiece right there and buzz like you normally would. And it does change the resistance, but my primary reasoning for using this is because it makes it significantly softer than buzzing your mouthpiece on its own. Buzzing the mouthpiece on its own isn't significantly loud, but I have gotten a few comments of like me being a little too loud with it. But I've never gotten comments when I'm using this. Using this practice mute and the up sound really helped me keep the peace between myself and the neighbors while still getting done what I need to get done to perform my job to the highest efficiency that I can. If you have any other questions about the current mute I showed you, or even the up sound, let me know. I'll love to answer them. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me in the cabin. See you next time. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. As always, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know this video is more for the trumpet nerds out there, talking about practice mutes and buzzing gadgets and what to practice and where to practice. But hopefully it reached someone out there and they kind of understand things a little better, or even have shared the same experiences. Either way, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.